All right, call the meeting to order. Let's begin with reviewing and approving the agenda, or if there's anything that anyone wants to add or discuss prior. Everybody get to view the agenda before the meeting? All set? Or anyone from the public? Do we have any public? Anyone from the public on this call? Okay. All right. Well, let's move forward. Also, let's welcome Jim Sullivan to is he on?
He might have tried to
come on.
He might have tried to
Wow.
rejoin. Yeah.
We can touch on that again later, but welcome to Jim. So let's start with
Jay. Do we want to vote on minutes before while Jim
That's where I'm
reconnects?
going next. Yeah.
Oh,
I was
great.
just about to say that. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
So why don't we move to approve the minutes from December 1st? Everybody get to review those. Any concerns, comments, anything? All right. Can we get a motion to approve?
A motion to approve the minutes?
Great. A second?
I'll second that. Just to see
Any
my name and lights.
You're welcome.
Any opposed? All right. So approved. Let's move next to Heather Pelham and jump into our presentation from the Department of Tourism and Marketing. Is she on?
Yep,
Savannah?
she's right there.
All right, perfect. Excellent.
She's next to you on my screen.
Gotcha. Heather, nice to meet you. The floor is yours.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. For anyone who I haven't met before, Heather Pelham, I am the Commissioner of the Department of Tourism and Marketing, which is within the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. So thank you for the invitation to join you folks this afternoon. What I wanted to do is kind of go over, at the request of this body, both our new destination management plan that we've just about put the final touches on, and then also the GROW program that we manage, which is about promoting the state for new residents. So I do have a presentation to share, so I will go ahead and cue that up right now. And as I understand it, we do have time for comments at the end, but feel free if you'd like to. If you have something burning that you want to ask while I'm going through this, feel free. I can't see everyone, so hoping that the group can alert me if there are any hands raised. Okay, so number one, I just wanted to kind of orient everyone to what visitation and tourism really means for the state of Vermont. So we do an economic impact report every year. We have the results from calendar year 2024, which is the most recent we have available, which shows that we bring in 16 million visitors who spend 4.2 billion in the state, and that is direct spending, which translates into 9% of our GDP. And as you can see here on the slide, that is 3 times the national average in terms of the importance of tourism to the state's economy. You folks here, I'm sure, are well familiar with the amount of jobs that are supported by tourism. It's about 10-11%, over 30,000. And all those visitors definitely bring in tax revenue. So again, just wanted to go through a couple of slides. As its notes here on the top, I think one of the things to remember is that, tourism just doesn't just happen on its own. And so the experience we've had in the past year with seeing the impacts of federal rhetoric on our Canadian visitation is just one example of how, we're not in a bubble here. Again, just some basics, those 16 million visitors basically pretty much evenly divided between day visitors and overnight visitors, but we did see an uptick in 2024. Chances are the total solar eclipse probably had a little bit to do with that. So we're thank you for that. And then in terms of visitor spending, I don't think there's a surprise here, but the majority of that spending does come from our folks who stay overnight. But it's also nice to see that day visitation is on the rise as well. And I think that one thing that is important just for everyone to keep in mind is, I try to be as conservative as possible when I'm talking about economic impact so that I keep everyone on board. So that 4.2 billion is just direct spending. If you include indirect supply chain purchases or induced, wage generated purchases, then we're up to an almost $7 billion impact. And I think what's important about This graph is just to keep in mind that, those lines in the dark blue, those sectors, those are where direct spending happens, but the impact of visitation impacts, as you can see, all these other sectors as well to different degrees. Again, mentioned tax revenues. I will be saying this a lot this coming session, but we are on the revenue side of the equation. Tourism is a revenue generating force in the state. Looking just at those direct tax revenues, that's over $1,000 per Vermont household. So as we're all collectively trying to figure out how to make Vermont more affordable, I would hope that folks keep tourism in mind as one of our perhaps underutilized tools in our toolbox, as we love to use that phrase. Okay, so back to workforce. Again, probably no surprise here for the folks on this call. This is 2024. We tried to keep all of our data sources from the same place. So this comes from our economic impact report. We are climbing back post-COVID, but we have not quite surpassed those 2019 employment numbers. And then again, just in terms of where that employment is, yes, there are some sectors where it is very much concentrated. But as we look at those indirect and induced kind of effects, like I said, supply chain and otherwise, we are seeing impact in sectors that you might not necessarily be top of mind when you think about visitation. If you look at, just let's say, education, healthcare, business services, and so forth that are shown in this chart. And then just one final background slide. We do take a look at, on a county level, what this might mean. So if you look, the third column over is the share of the visitor spending, per county. So you can see there's a heavy concentration in Chittenden County, which is not to be surprised given that we have the airport there and so much other infrastructure, but certainly is distributed with some, pockets. And then again, on the employment side, that's the second to the last column on the right. We see a large concentration in Lamoille County, obviously big winter sports hub for us, well, all seasons really. But again, you can see that share of employment coming from visitation is fairly well distributed across the state. And then just the notes I have in blue there, it's just interesting to see the year-over-year increases in Essex, Grand Isle, and Franklin counties. I would suppose that is a direct result of the total solar eclipse. Now, granted, those are smaller economies, so you're going to be able to see a larger year-over-year increase, but it is interesting to see outliers where you wouldn't normally expect them. So I take that as good news. Okay, so jumping into this destination management plan. Some folks may be aware, but the Department of Tourism did receive a large federal grant coming out of COVID as part of recovery, where we were able to invest in a couple of different initiatives that we might not have otherwise. One of them that was on the very top of our list was to do some strategic planning. How could we really support the industry going forward? And so we did create this destination management plan, which we're just about completed. It's been pretty much been a years long effort, a lot of public engagement, as you can see here, from listening sessions around the state to interviews and surveys and so forth. We did have a planning committee of industry stakeholders that helped us put together what ended up becoming 4 strategic imperatives, which I will go through, that each have a set of objectives. And I'm just going to go through these on a pretty high level, and then we can maybe talk about them after. There's a lot more detail that will be in the plan itself as to what we mean by each of these objectives, but I just wanted to give you a flavor of what it is that we're working on at the Department of Tourism, knowing how much it impacts the economy. So the 4 imperatives, I like to say when I talk about this, if these don't sound like a big surprise, that's good. That means that we all kind of are on the same wavelength, but really leveraging our destination marketing efforts, thinking about how we can just strengthen the resiliency of the sector overall. When we talk about strengthen and diversify Vermont's tourism infrastructure, that's really about destination development. And then finally, how do we make sure that we enhance the Vermont visitor experience so that guests still want to come here? So I go through those 4 one at a time. This first one, really, this is the bread and the butter of what we do, destination marketing. But, how do we kind of get down to the next level of what that really means? And when we look at, what we can achieve, right away, we know that we need to kind of address seasonality issues that we have. So how can we increase year-round distribution of travelers, and then where they go in the state? Because, those pockets that have a very strong tourism infrastructure, even I'll just take the Mad River Valley, for example. Right now, booming, ski season, it's amazing. In the summer, still a beautiful place. Summer is, we see more visitors in the summer overall than other seasons. And yet, they'll tell us that, the restaurants are struggling to stay open and they just don't have the volume of visitors on a consistent basis to keep their staff. So when we think about, our destination marketing efforts and how do we kind of make sure that we are keeping that pump primed throughout the year, that's definitely something we're looking at. And then again, making sure that we are getting folks throughout the state to every corner as much as possible. So, how do we do that? Part of that is trying to expand our brand reach, beyond just our drive markets. We have a fairly sophisticated marketing program into how we do that and how we measure our success and which markets we go into and so forth. But really kind of leaning into making sure that we're making the most of the budget that we do have. Midweek and off-peak visitation is definitely an area of interest for us. We have decent meeting infrastructure, mostly supported a lot of times now by like our destination wedding activities, but Vermont could really do a lot more to encourage small boutique meetings, corporate retreats, and so forth, even if we don't have that elusive conference center. That would keep people coming here in midweek, which would again help flatten out some of those highs and lows when it comes to demand. That's really the kind of predictability that businesses need to keep their workforce. Increasing the diversity of Vermont's visitor base has been something we've been working on for quite a while now, but is still a huge priority for us. And then making sure that we still think about international markets. I mentioned the Canadian market in the past, but international is really a long-term growth opportunity for Vermont, and it takes a while to build that over time. So we have a certain portion of our efforts directed towards international. Here's where we get into, so that's destination marketing. This is really more about destination management, the second imperative. So it's really looking at like our partners on the local and the regional level. What are they doing? What can we do to support them? Because, we are engaged in top of the funnel activities. We get the word out, but where exactly folks decide to spend their time really comes down to the local community. One of the things we'd like to support on the local level would be through some kind of grant program. We've been able to run a few grant programs in the past through federal funding. That has all gone. So that leads into the second strategy of being able to secure sustainable tourism funding. So long term, how can we make sure that we are continuing to provide these benefits that the state as a whole benefits from? There is a need to kind of increase and sort of align tourism advocacy. Won't go into that too much here, but then again, in terms of resilience, we've been through some disruptive events. So how do we help the industry prepare for that? And also resident support for tourism is something that we definitely keep in mind. I didn't put it in this deck, but we have some statistics that we were able to get from the most recent Vermonter poll that UVM puts on through the Center for Rural Studies each year. We do have good support for tourism in the state. But I want to make sure that we're always thinking about destination management in terms of, yes, we want to provide a good guest experience, but it's really about quality of life of our residents at the same time. And then, if we are going to put a bullet point in here about workforce, calling it out directly, what is the right role for tourism here for us to cultivate support for workforce development programs? And that's something that I would love to kind of talk a little bit more, because we're trying to focus here in this plan as to thinking about what is the role for VDTM specifically as a department, what are the role for our partners, where are we supporting, where are we leading, where can we maybe just present the idea, but are really, our role is more of a convener or, promoter, or what does that look like? So I'd love to be able to talk more about that. This imperative is really about destination development. So, how do we make sure that and that's the royal we, since I like to say we promote the experiences, we don't create them ourselves, but what are our, community and local partners doing on the ground to create a great guest experience? So how do we help them think about increasing their off-peak offerings? I think that our arts and culture community has a great role to play in this one in particular. And then what does the infrastructure that supports visitation look like? So is that, physical infrastructure? We're talking about parking lots and EV chargers, or is it, wayfinding? Is it outdoor recreation infrastructure? There's all sorts of different infrastructure kind of needs that we're thinking about there. And again, what is our role supporting perhaps other partners at the same time? And then making sure that we are keeping an eye on those sort of underdeveloped tourism sectors. So beyond outdoor recreation, think agritourism or wellness or other places where Vermont really has a market advantage and be able to offer something that folks are really looking for. And then the final one is really just keeping our eye on what is the Vermont visitor experience. If we're not creating a quality experience, then folks aren't going to want to come here. So how do we focus on in-market visitor information? How do we think about our guests who have disabilities and need a little bit extra? And then again, how do we think about just quality customer service? So part of the, as we get farther down in the specifics of these, we think about an ambassador program that we used to have to make sure that our frontline workers really have the information, not only to provide good just information for our guests, but also are doing that with every visitor in mind. So those are the 4 strategic objectives. Like I said, I'll just go through the presentation, but then we'd love to kind of talk about that one in more detail. But just so folks know, our plans for this plan is that we do have an annual tourism summit every year in April. We will be talking about this more then, but we will be doing our own sort of roadshow around the state, much like we did with the listening sessions to create this plan. We did this for the first time down in Bennington County when we were there in December with the governor's Capital for a Day project to really talk it through with the folks on the ground, what rings true to them, where do they see themselves in this plan, what are their priorities? Again, how do we again, put these into prioritization? What are we going to tackle first? This is a 5+ year plan. In the plan itself, we do have, metrics of how we will measure our progress, but it's really an on the ground project for us over the long term. So that's where we're going with that. I do have a couple of slides here that I want to share for folks who may or may not be aware of. With this federal funding that we created the plan, we were able to do a couple of specific workforce development programs that we were able to fund. One of them was for the Vermont Outdoor Business Alliance. We work with them in these 3 areas for them to put on workshop trainings for folks, bicycle mechanics, snow sports, trail workers. That was a great project. It's the kind of thing that was once in a lifetime sort of funding that we had. But certainly VOBA and Ski Vermont and other partners in the outdoor rec space continue to work on their own kind of, pipeline work when it comes to outdoor rec professions and kind of thinking about what that sort of career pathways look like. So happy that we were able to create some momentum in that space. And then we were also able to help launch a new certificate program at the University of Vermont, the Hospitality Management Certificate. This one was particularly exciting for us because it didn't exist and now it does. They were able to put on 2 cohorts last year. The 3rd cohort is supposed to open in February, but I have heard that their enrollment numbers are not where they'd like to be. So if there's anyone on this call in your networks that you might be able to help spread the word that there is a new cohort starting. The idea here is that this is for either incumbent workers or for folks looking to get into the profession to really understand, what it is and what the kind of career trajectory would be for folks in hospitality. And then the program does have a capstone program, so they do an on-site internship at, you know, some of the locations you see here. So it's really a powerful program. I would hate to see it lose momentum. So I'm happy to give more information after this call. Folks have ideas about how we might be able to get the word out for this cohort that's about to launch. And then the success of that program did encourage UVM to create a new one based on snow sports and outdoor recreation, which they hope to launch this fall. One of the mechanics they're trying to work out is for current students to be able to take these certificate classes, as well as folks either who are not otherwise in higher education at the moment, but exciting to see that they are taking this to the next level. So that, I think, is the destination management plan. So maybe I'll just go through, I know I want to keep on time here, but so then there's another whole area of what we do. So Department of Tourism and Marketing, yes, visitation is definitely something that we are always thinking about, but we are also thinking about relocation as well. So we manage the Think Vermont program. This is our program for the state to, again, top of the funnel, getting the word out for folks to think about moving to Vermont. We've been engaged in this work for probably about 10 years now, really, like I said, on the promotion side. So that's building that awareness through the thinkvermont.com website, our own communications and so forth. Where we're looking for like our call to action here is the lead generation we do with our Connect with a Vermonter program. So, you know, we have the website. When somebody raises their hand and say, hey, I'm interested in learning more, we have a form submission process. We get about 75 leads per month this way. And then what we do with those leads is we are able to push them down the funnel to our regional partners. We did get funding specifically from the legislature in 2023 to create this GROW program, the Grants for Relocation Outreach Work. In the past, we had just a volunteer, you know, we're all friends here kind of arrangement with our regional partners. Now we have a specific grant program with them, so we were able to provide funding. The maximum they can get is $75,000 a year. What we hope that does is actually give them capacity to do this work. I'll get into that a little bit more, but that's really it's the awareness, it's get the leads, push them down the funnel to our state partners. So, you know, doing that, we right now are running our Think Blank campaign. So these are some social media examples and digital display ads of think and enter positive something, and then Think Vermont. And again, the call to action is to complete this Connect with a Vermonter form so that we can make that connection. As you might have noticed, this is the leads. Sorry, going back to this chart, you can see a big spike in June of how many leads that we were getting through the program. We were able to do a couple of weeks in the New York City subway last June, and we saw the increase in leads corresponding right along with it. When we were able to do a big splash, we made a splash. And there's a quote here from a Vermont Public article just showing that people do see these ads, and it does inspire them to action. This particular story is a complicated one, but it does show that folks are actually seeing ads and acting on them. Who our grantee organizations are, thankfully with this, so we did our first run of the program was 2 years, 24 and 25. Now we're in our second part of this grant program. So these are the organizations we'll be working with for the next 2 years. We have full coverage over the entire state now, which is great. We previously had a hole up in the Northwest in the past, but now we have Franklin, Grand Isle counties, as well as Lamoille County as grant recipients. And their activities are really split between relocation and retention, because we know that we can, that we've learned over the past, like I said, we've been doing this for almost 10 years now, that the proof in the pudding really comes on the local level. We can talk about Vermont, we can say all these wonderful things, but, moving is not something that people just pick up one day and decide they want to do. They have lots and lots and lots of questions. And so our ability to have grant agreements and actually provide funding to these local organizations is what is making the difference as we move those leads to actual people who move here, because that's really the role of those organizations. So this is showing for those first 2 years of the program, over 2,000 leads. And then as we move them down the funnel, keep working with them, we've been able to document that 95 families have moved here for the program. Now with everything, that's not like everyone who moves to Vermont is checking in with us and says, hey, I moved to Vermont. So I would take this as a kind of sample of folks who are moving here and what it takes to move here. And this kind of shows you a little bit more just in terms of, yeah, go ahead, Lyle.
Just with my former
Yes.
RDC hat on, these numbers are really probably low because the state doesn't always get the feedback from the partners on the actual number of people that come through. This program truly works for the amount of money that's being spent. So just want to throw that out there.
Thank you, Lyle. No, I appreciate that. And I'll say that big dark 68 there in Rutland County is definitely as a result of Lyle's former team and the work that's really been done in Rutland. It's one of the most sophisticated programs that we have for relocation. What we're seeing here is that folks are moving all over the state. Some of the regions have more work to do, quote unquote. So you'll see, Orange County, for example, we don't have the infrastructure there yet. GMEDC is a grant recipient now, but they just hired someone about 8 months ago. So it takes time. You can even see on that chart there how long it takes people to move through. It takes a while for people to move, but they are moving throughout the state and they are moving from pretty much the entire country. It's not like they're just coming from a drive market. We see increase from all over. And then the other thing I just want to point out, you guys can read this on your own, but I just wanted to, this idea that this concierge level support, as we like to say, is so important in the fact that people need to be seen and heard and they need someone to talk to. And when I mentioned before that there's really 2 tracks of the work under GROW, which is relocation, helping folks to move here, but it's about retention just as much. It's about how do these folks who have moved here get integrated in their communities, feel like they want to be here, get to know whether it's the local business community, the schools, the whatever affinity group that they might be interested in. But that retention piece is as strong as the relocation piece. And then one other thing I just want to point out here, in our grantees that we work with, we also do work with the Vermont Professionals of Color Network, as well as out in the open, so that if folks in the intake process, they're able to say, I'm a person of color, I'd like to speak to somebody specifically, or if I have LGBTQ plus concerns and so forth. We also do have on the intake form, if people are interested in job placement assistance, we have a automated system that those leads then get directed to the Department of Labor. All of our regional grantees do work with their local Department of Labor offices. As anything, of course, there's probably some that are stronger relationships versus others, and something that we could certainly work more on. But that is part of our process so far. So I think I'm going to stop there because I've talked a lot. And maybe we can have discussion. Yes, Jim.
Can't hear you. Can you guys hear him?
No.
Can't hear
No.
you, Jim. Yeah. No.
If you're able to type it in the chat, I'll do my best.
How about now?
Oh,
Oh,
there we
you
go.
are.
Yeah.
Now? Now?
Yes.
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 You
Yes.
can hear that?
Yes.
All right. Well, I fixed my speaker and camera problem. I just didn't fix my microphone problem all the way. Sorry about that. I was just wondering if you had further breakdown on the demographics of the people who completed the move to Vermont, whether, you know, the age groups and whether they were, you know, working families or retired people, or, you know, what was there a general trend, or was it different by region?
Yeah, we definitely have a lot more data that I could follow up and share with folks. I wasn't sure what, you know, what level here would be helpful. We find mostly they are working families, so not necessarily retirees. Again, these are generalizations that I'm sharing, but we do find also that it's about 50-50 as to how many people come with a job, quote unquote, or start the process and then are looking for a job. So when I say they come with a job, that may be that they've received a job offer and or they have a position that they can do remotely. We see it's about 50-50. You most are coming as a family unit. You know, we do see some solo, but not that many. What else are you asking? I would say in terms of like sectors, it's really all over the map. So there isn't like, oh, well, we're seeing a lot of folks from, you know, tech or healthcare. We really see folks coming with all sorts of different broad backgrounds. What else I was just going to say? I think the other thing that's interesting is that we do know that certainly visitors can be our most likely new residents, but of the folks that are coming and filling out the form, now maybe that's because that's, you know, that's how they're starting this process. We find that about 50% of them have never been to Vermont before. So it's not just necessarily that people have an affinity for Vermont and they want to move here. We definitely have found whether it's climate change, it is, you know, different kinds of progressive policies, just, you know, quality of life that folks are searching. We saw a huge, I will not lie, we saw a huge influx in leads last November. And, you know, people are looking to see where maybe they might fit a little bit differently. So it's really about 50-50 about those who have an affinity or those who have just identified Vermont as a place that they can see themselves.
Thanks.
Sure. All right, well, we'll just add on to that one of the benefits now of having a structured grant program with our grantees, as, you know, as Lyle mentioned, you know, we don't always get all the information back from the partners, but we do now have a mechanism that they provide us with monthly reports. We are putting the final touches on our final report of those first 2 years of the program that will have a lot more metrics and charts and that kind of insights that you were just asking about, Jim, in terms of, you know, what they're, you know, we ask them like, how many community connections did you make? You know, are you connecting people with schools or businesses? You know, which businesses are you talking to? Really as much information as we can get so that we can kind of figure out what the themes are and what are the patterns we should be looking out for as best we can from our grantees. So that's kind of what we're involved in over here. I would be really curious to kind of go back to that question when we think about, you know, our 5-10-year plan in terms of workforce. If folks on the call have an idea where you could see the department really interfacing with all the work that this board does. Like I said, we had some federal funding. We thought it was important enough to invest in the workforce programs that I mentioned. We don't have that ongoing. We're happy to be a partner as much as we can. But I'd be curious if any of that I shared on the destination management plan kind of, there were any bells that went off of like, hey, we should really be working together on this or that. Jay.
Hi, Heather.
Hi.
I want to make sure that you're aware and that the executive committee is aware of a grant that was recently awarded to VOBA from the U.S. Climate Alliance, that the Department of Labor, working with the Climate Action Office and VOBA, we supported their application for $100,000 in funds. It's private philanthropy, but VOBA will be doing, they're calling it the Cowie Climate Outdoors Workforce Initiative. And we have until October, I think. They're surveying all the businesses that are outdoor businesses to get a sense of what their needs are, and what's the overlap with climate change and resilient communities. So there's this overlap there. When we have climate events, the outdoor businesses can't operate in the way that we expect them to. So we're just trying to understand what kind of training these businesses would need, and how we could organize it. So they're doing a lot of the legwork with this grant funding. And so
Thank you.
I didn't
Yeah,
know if you were aware of that.
Yes, I know a little bit of it. I don't know the ins and outs of it. But VOBA is a great partner of the Agency of Commerce in general. And I think that I appreciate the call out to make sure that we kind of get into the weeds a little bit more to make sure that we are supporting that work. So thank you.
Welcome.
I think Scott had his
Scott's
hand.
next, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Heather, this is Scott Giles with BSAC, and I'm in the airport, so I apologize for hoping that I'm going to get out, but we'll see what happens. Really appreciated the presentation, particularly in the places where you've been doing some seeding and some training programs there, and I'm just mindful that oftentimes we're the other side of the financing of the participants in that. And there may be some opportunities for us to just make sure that we're sharing information together so that we can get the word out to individuals who may be interested in those programs. But also, if you develop models because you've got fewer funds that require participants to contribute, we may have aid programs that will help, kind of pay for the tuition or training component on the other side. So I think, and then, lastly, just appreciate the work that you all have done on the Think Vermont through the course of the years, and note that, higher ed is engaged with you all in that to varying degrees over the course of the years, and the higher ed community, we're just meeting several weeks ago, would love to see how it is that we can kind of tag team with you on taking advantage of the interest in Vermont.
Great. I love that idea. And I think that a lot of it really kind of, number one, yes, on the financing side, let's make sure that, we keep the lines of communications open so we can provide that to folks, that kind of information. But it just makes me think, a lot of the work that I've been trying to lead the department through is, thinking beyond destination marketing. Obviously, we will always do that, and that is what we do very well. But really, how can we make those connections between, talent attraction, business recruitment, new Vermonters? It's all part and parcel. And so we have a role to play in sort of telling the story, but making sure that we are realizing that these are not separate things. Yes, people come here on vacation, but people move here for the reasons that they also go on vacation, and they also need a job. And just so that, whether it's talent attraction or it's student recruitment or it's business recruitment, I definitely see where we're working together on that.
Great, thank you.
We're trying to.
I think Ruth is up next.
Thanks. Hi, Heather. I represent Secretary Saunders and the Agency of Education and on the State Workforce Development Board, but my specific title is that I'm the State Director of Career Technical Education. And when I was listening to you, I just see lots of opportunity for connection with both career technical education overall, but also specifically with the adult career technical education system. For some of those training opportunities, there are systems in place that partner well already with VSAC for funding that's available to support people in accessing the kinds of training you were talking about. And also a career technical education center or adult education program may be a different entry point for folks who don't see themselves as connecting with a post-secondary education system, but see the value of technical or trades training in particular. I think that's where there's strengths in those systems that may be worthy of exploration.
Yeah, thank you. I would love to connect you with Sarah on our team to make sure that we can give you the information on the few programs that we are specifically attached to, but that also make sure that we can get that information to our grantees who may also have that need. Because I think that's always the trick, is aligning the resources with the specific individual that you're talking to that particular day. that would be great. I'd love to
I
do
was
that
also
to all of
thinking
them.
about the need to increase, to think about increasing how Vermont is accessible to individuals with disabilities. And it's an area that we do a lot of work with in the education sphere in terms of just physical accessibility to our CTE centers. We have obligations there under federal law. And I would say that this is an area where perhaps small state has relied on, and with limited capacity has relied on good intentions and best efforts. But I'm just thinking of one CTE center that was built in the 2000s with fully accessible plans that is not fully accessible. And just in building sign off and those kinds of things, nobody caught those things. So how we might think about just systems that would better support. And for that CTE center, they wanted to be fully accessible. It was a challenge to them because they didn't have they relied on their builders to follow their architect's plans. And then when there were things that weren't done correctly, it was after the fact and then cost money to repair. How we better use policy to strengthen efforts and funds people are spending with good intentions that don't always fully align.
Yes, I mean, that was, it's one of the objectives in our plan is to think about accessibility. There's a lot of work in that space by different destinations. One of the things, if we're able to get a little bit more funding, and I won't get on that bandwagon too much, but it would be at least to do an assessment, because one of the things that we've learned with working with different disabled communities is that the number one need is information. It's where is this, it's not just ADA accessible, right? It's like, what does this hotel room have? What are the dimensions between the bed and the desk and so forth? But it's also just, where can I get my wheelchair repaired if it breaks while I'm on vacation? What kind of transportation is available at the airport if I need a van, a lift assist van or whatever it may be. And just that's what we hear from travelers is that they spend, 3 times as long as they plan on going on vacation, just trying to find information out about the destination before they go there. So if we're able to invest a little bit more into that and helping our local partners do the same, it could really go a long way to, helping to service, what is estimated as a third of the population. So.
Jim?
Yeah.
Thanks. Just a observation that probably goes without saying, but I'm really involved in a lot of outdoor recreation activities in our region, and I appreciated your slide there with the training modules that had been done for trail building and all that bike shop stuff and stuff that we all like to do. I have to say that that's really important. In our region, we do a phenomenal amount of that stuff with volunteer work, and it's really good. But all the resources that we have here for outdoor recreation, our trails and our rivers and our bikeable roads and our Nordic ski and everything else, it really relies so heavily on effective complement in the hospitality side. And so, when you think about workforce development and, kind of things that are really synergistic, really support, I mean, all the outdoor recreation stuff, we really need, I think, better connection and better tuning in across those sectors, the hospitality and the outdoor recreation. I mean, it's obvious in places where you have big ski mountain, right? That it's all tied together. But in places where we have these diffuse outdoor recreation, it's tremendous opportunities, and we get people from all over the country and the world signing into our trail register on our trail network. But they need places to eat and stay, and those people need to know about our resources and how to direct people to those resources. So I just made a comment. It's great to have those things, but sometimes there's not the level of coordination between them that there needs to be.
Yeah, I agree, Jim. Sometimes I find myself a little bit of monkey in the middle because, in the hospitality space, they're focusing on, that guest experience, but those people are also doing outdoor rec. And then in the outdoor rec space, it's like they're focused on those experiences, but those people need a place to stay. And they're not necessarily thinking about them in the same breath. But when you look at the, economic impact of outdoor rec, the biggest piece of the pie is lodging and, accommodations and food service. So, I'm right there with you, and I'll just briefly mention, I think that the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail is an excellent example of an outdoor rec infrastructure asset that has so much potential, but without the rest of the infrastructure of hospitality that surrounds it, that is never going to achieve what it might be able to achieve if there aren't places for people to stay and to eat and to get their bike serviced and so forth. So, we can't stop just, not that anyone is saying that, but, there's so much more to do there.
I think Lyle's up next.
Thank you. Sometimes I like to look at what's working, and I know Heather's aware of this, but a model that works quite well is the Killington Resort Public-Private Partnership with Vermont State University. They have the Hospitality and Resort Management Program. I think there's probably 40 students in that right now. What's pretty remarkable about that is many of those students are from out of state, and those students will end up staying here and getting pretty high-paid jobs. So I wonder if working more closely with Vermont State University and doing something in a Stowe/Burke Mountain Alliance where there might be another program, or a Jay Peak Alliance where there might be a program. And I could see other recreational sectors working on a similar type of project. But it is a bachelor's degree program. And so what it is it's bringing young people into Vermont to do things they love to do, and they want to go to college anyway, and they're getting paid. So we're wrapping a whole lot of things into one package.
Yeah, great. It's a great program, Lyle. It's been a little while now, but I don't think that particular group is interested in expanding, but I would love to think about if could it be replicated at a different mountain with a different higher education institution. Agreed.
Kendall?
I have a slightly different direction to go for a second, and we can either table this or not. But Heather, I'm wondering, one of the things we hear a lot, right, is a lot of these can be, not always, but can be seasonal jobs. Right. So when I'm talking with employers around unemployment insurance, or how do I retain workforce and get them to come back in these seasonal swings, this isn't necessarily new. There's been a great interest, and I think it's been tried with different levels of success and fidelity over the years, but how we can match employers to be partners. So I'm making something up right now, like just, so let's say during the winter you work at the ski mountain in a seasonal position. Ski mountains do have year-round positions, but you work there in a seasonal position, and then that mountain has some sort of soft informal relationship or MOU where then they refer employees down the hill to a restaurant during the summer months. Casella Construction's actually figured this out in southern Vermont with a mountain partnership down there that seems to be working really well. I think that was largely, just the dedication and the personalities involved in terms of how to then scale that to be a broader model. But I'm just curious what you hear in terms of that seasonal retention, recruitment, getting people back year after year, and if you have seen any other models around the state where you have two kind of, again, tourism, hospitality, leisure businesses partnering to share employees either formally or informally.
Well, I can say it's definitely a conversation that comes up periodically. I think everyone's kind of wondering how best to crack that nut. I don't know that I can say I know exactly, a pairing that's really worked. I would love to think that maybe the state could take a role with the state park system, if that is like the summer partner, and then maybe it's one of the ski mountains. There are other. Basin Harbor Club is just one that often comes up that's been in these conversations a lot as another summer employer, summer heavy, but not, closed in the winter. What I've heard is that it gets complicated in terms of like, who's kind of like the lead employer, whose insurance are they on? Does that switch halfway through the year? All the sort of stuff that you'd be much better to answer than I.
Workers' comp,
right, exactly. Than I possibly could.
I get that.
But I know that the Vermont Lodging Association is really interested in this.
Which association, Heather?
The Vermont Lodging Association. They have a new executive director, Brian Maggiato. I'd be happy to connect you, but just in terms of, from what I hear is, yes, there is a lot of interest, and if there was some sort of backbone organization or, some kind of like, how do we share that capacity or resources, I do think you would find people would be happy to be part of a pilot of some kind.
All right.
All right.
Any other questions for Heather? Thank you very much. This was great.
Happy to be here. So thank you for the invitation. Look forward to maybe staying in better touch in the future. But yeah, let us know how we can work together. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Millian.
Yeah, thank you, Heather.
Okay, take care. Thank you.
Take care.
Okay.
All right, so Sabana and Drake, I think we're handing this to you for the priority of service for the WIOA adult funds.
Yep, you are.
All right.
Okay. With Jay Ramsey in a minute or two, and I may botch the intro here, so apologies. But we need to, and part of our function as a board is that we are ensuring that the WIOA programs are meeting the that we're complying with the federal guidelines. And we did have a comment from the education and training part of VUS DOL that said that we were out of compliance, I'm saying in quotes there, about how we're handling our priority of service with adult services. Is that fair to way to put it, Jay? Okay, yes.
Absolutely.
So part of our responsibilities as a board is to be able to say that we've heard from the department and that then take a vote and approve our plans moving forward so that we get back in compliance, so to speak, and answer their concerns. And with that, I'll introduce you, Jay. Jay Ramsey. I think everybody knows you.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. I have a PowerPoint presentation. It's only 16 slides. I know that you all received this document as a primer, so I'm going to dig a little bit deeper in this as part of my job to help train you. And then I have some recommendations at the end, which I hope will be relatively easy for you to accept and respond to. All right, so you can see this slide, WIOA serving high need adults. I'm going to flag here that some of the contents of this presentation are going to relate to a presentation that you're going to have in a couple of months from the SNAP program and Haley Turner Lawyer. So I just want to say that. I'm also going to ask that you hold questions. There's two places where I have a pause for questions. One is at the end of this technical definition section, and one is at the end all the way. So the purpose of this presentation is to give you some baseline information about priority of service and to build off of concepts that I presented previously, so you can better understand your role in adult priority of service as a policy and in the accountability of the WIOA program administered by the Department of Labor in Vermont. So this presentation is going to walk you through, this is some foundational knowledge. I'm going to give you a technical definition. We're going to talk about adult priority of service in practice. We're going to review some data. And then I'm going to share with you a little bit about what's in scope with the role of the board and what's out of scope. So as Sabina said, the U.S. Department of Labor's Employment and Training Administration, our regional office in Boston, came up in 2024 to audit or review us. One of the findings is on the screen here, that the Workforce Board, which didn't exist at that time, had not established criteria for adult priority of service, and then it tells you, it tells us what we need to do. Distribute to the American Job Centers in this case means distribute the policy and criteria to me at the Department of Labor, and I will distribute it to our program administrators and our case managers and regional managers. Those are the people that carry out the work. In previous presentations, I have talked about single area state versus local areas. WIOA as a law doesn't really do a great job of being clear about what applies to a local area and what applies to a single area. We're a small state, so we're a single area state. So you can use local area and single area somewhat interchangeably. And in another previous presentation, I talked to you about the social determinants of work model, which is here on the screen. And this is just a model that helps us understand what kind of barriers can exist for people to be able to access employment and jobs and training. In the context of adult priority of service, the social determinants of work model recognizes that access to stable employment and advancement is shaped by conditions like income, education, health, housing, transportation, caregiving responsibilities, and digital access, not just individual effort. As you saw in this document, again, WIOA's priority populations, public assistance recipients, low-income individuals, and individuals with basic skill deficiencies function as proxies for these determinants, ensuring that limited workforce resources that we have at the department through WIOA are directed first to those facing the greatest structural barriers to work. So from a technical standpoint, you can read the definition there, but in Title I of WIOA, which is our individual funding, funding that supports individuals, it says for recipients of individualized career and training services funded through WIOA, priority is given to, it doesn't say veterans, but there's a separate policy that puts veterans at the top. Then it goes to recipients of public assistance. So that would be SNAP, TANF. Then it goes to other low-income individuals. And then it goes to individuals who are basic skills deficient. And in federal guidance, it goes on to clarify that that also applies to individuals with language access needs. So these are the groups, large overarching categories that represent the priority of service. And let me pick this apart a little bit for you. So what are career and training services? There's 3 career service types in our system, and this comes from a guidance letter noted at the bottom. So we have basic career services, excuse me, which are available universally. You can come into a job center and you're going to meet with someone and they're going to help you understand the labor market. They're going to help you apply for unemployment insurance if you need it. They're going to make referrals if you need those. They're going to help you get signed up with a resume workshop and an interview skills workshop. The next level up is in the form of a referral. That person is going to say, oh, it looks like you might need additional assistance, so we're going to set you up for individualized career services. So that's where a case manager comes in and meets with you and develops an individualized plan. And that's where funds can start being utilized to support your training needs or supportive services if you need a uniform. But it's all based on income eligibility and a commitment to working with someone to help manage your case. And then the final thing is follow-up services. So when we provide individualized career services, it's for a long period of time, maybe 8 months, maybe a year. And there are touch points along the way because we have federal reporting and we need that person to be able to tell us, did they finish the training? Did they get that job? Are they still employed with that job? And this is what the follow-up services are about. So adult priority of service, again, it's the priority of service is not intended to close doors for our staff working in the job centers, but it does tell us which door opens first. And so, let's see. Adult priority of service is a required policy. It's an equity provision, making sure that the resources get to the people who need it most. It's a decision framework that we would apply when funds are limited, when the economy shifts and we see more people coming in, or when training spots are competitive or programs that we administer, or when our supportive services have some constraint on them. It is not a discretionary policy that states can choose to participate in or not. It's required by the federal government. It is not a ban on the department or our workforce partners serving middle income or higher income adults. It is not a requirement that only priority populations are served. Again, we serve everyone, but some people get to move to the front of the line. And it is not a one-time eligibility checkbox. We're always going through and making sure that people who are in the program are eligible to be in the program. So why does it matter? It matters because we're serving everyone. It matters because the federal workforce funding from WIOA is finite, but the demand is not. It's an opportunity with the data that I'm going to show you for continuous improvement and reflection about who we're serving, why we're not serving certain people, who could we be serving more. And it allows for equity of access to those limited federal funds by those with the greatest need. So when it always matters, and it especially matters when the demand for workforce services funded by WIOA is high. And so I'm going to stop for a second and see about your understanding. Do you have any questions about what I've presented so far? Nope.
Representative Marcotte.
Jay, how does this program interact with adult learning services and higher ability?
So good question. Those programs, adult education and literacy is Title II, higher ability is Title IV, are referrals to us. And we might see that someone, let's just say a client that they've referred to us checks all the boxes. They're on SNAP and TANF and they have a disability and they have low literacy score. They're going to get bumped to the top of the line in terms of how cases are assigned to case managers, in terms of what we're going to be able to pay for. So if let's just say fast forward to a place when the economy has really shifted and we have a lot of unemployed people. The folks that are referred to us that fall into these priority of service categories go on a wait list and they're going to go to the front of the line when another spot opens. So the people who don't meet the priority of service requirement will move down and have to wait longer until more funds become available. So just, the system really relies on referrals from community partners, the community action agencies, SNAP and TANF through the ICANN program. And ICANN stands for Individual Career Advancement Network. That's the system that we have in place where when someone receives food stamps, they get a referral to employment services at the Department of Labor. So I'm going to move us ahead to slide 11, where we're going to look at the previous program year's data. So this is program year 24 that goes from July 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2025. During this time period, in the WIOA adult program, we had 331 total participants. And remember that that means that we're giving them individualized career services, that it's tailored to the person, that they're meeting with a case manager. And then before I show you the little pictures, I also want to say that any of these demographic data points are voluntary disclosures from the customer. They don't have to tell us that they are a recipient of SNAP or TANF. They don't have to tell us that they're low income, but if they want to qualify for the program, they have to show what their earnings were. So just remember, these are voluntary demographic disclosures, and some people choose not to. So for the low income population, about 70% of participants were low income. For public assistance recipients, 45% were recipients. That's a little less than half. And this category is supported by the ICANN program and referrals from the EAP and supplemental nutrition and temporary assistance programs. There's no data sharing, so we don't use administrative data to verify this. It could be more. For basic skills deficient, only about 13% of customers disclosed that they were basic skills deficient. I don't think that this chart here is including anyone that has a language access need. So we have a little bit of work to do on the data behind the scenes, but this gives you a rough picture of the overarching categories of adult priority of service. In total, nearly 70% of those 331 participants fall into this priority of service category. And so just remember that these folks are the people with the most significant barriers to employment. They're the people who have the most significant barriers to their beliefs about themselves. And so it's a harder population of people to work with because of all of those factors. So let's just look at this. It's going to be busy. The in-scope role for the board, maybe it will let me do this, it's about ensuring the policies clearly define the populations and align with federal law and guidance. It's about continuous improvement and using data, and it's about asking the right questions. Having me come in and present on a regular basis, potentially annually, about how we're doing. We should be doing this sort of information sharing and reflection annually just to make sure that we're not missing something. What's out of scope for the board and for the executive committee is overriding statutory priority, the way that the federal government has structured it, micromanaging case decisions, or setting yourself up as a board to decide individual eligibility for services. That's the department's job in implementing the programs. Your job is oversight of our implementation. And so you should ask me to come back and present information. We should have a healthy discussion about whether there should be other populations added. But I wouldn't expect to bring cases to the board for you to decide who should get funding and who should not. So why does it matter in Vermont? Because 6.5% of all adult Vermonters are veterans. 1 in 10 Vermonters are low income. 1 in 10 Vermonters receive food stamps via SNAP or the 3 Squares program. 57 out of 100 families living in poverty receive cash assistance from Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. Somewhere around 8% lack a high school diploma, and somewhere around almost 2% say they speak English less than very well in surveys. Most of this comes from the American Community Survey, but there's a resource slide at the end if you want to know where I found those figures. So my recommendations are that the board establish a written policy addressing adult priority of service in the Title I programs. I have an operational policy in the Workforce Development Division. The board's policy should include the regularity at which you revisit this and acknowledging the federally required populations. As you review that policy, you may contemplate adding other populations. At this time, though, I'm recommending that you not add new categories to the priority population list. We have an IT system project that's going to start up soon, and we're going to have to freeze our current system and not make changes to it so that we can successfully get into the new system. And that my recommendation is that annually you request from the Director of Workforce Development a report on the adult priority of service requirement. And that was my last slide. Welcome any questions or comments.
Jan? Oh, there you are. It would be our role to vote on this now, correct? That we will.
I think you might want to have some discussion about.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was going to say as well. Yeah, maybe at the next meeting, Sabina, have a section where we discuss it openly, just because it's 2:15 already and you still have some.
Yep. Yep. Okay.
Stuff
At the
to do.
February Executive Committee.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. So we'll
Thank you,
discuss
Jay,
and
for
vote
that.
there. Okay.
Welcome.
Lyle?
Jay, could you send that through the other Jay to us, or however you'd like to get it out to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll share it around with the minutes and everything.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you again,
Okay.
Jay. It's appreciated.
Oh,
Oh,
Scott.
Scott?
Just one quick question, just because I've had a federal grant flagged for these purposes. Jay, when you're talking about other populations, has the administration provided any more specific guidance regarding how those populations can or can't be defined that we need to be alert to?
This administration has not provided any other guidance to replace the guidance I was working off of, TEGL 1916.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Jay? Excellent. Great. Thank you again, Jay. Sabina, Drake, do you guys want, I know that we're kind of closing in on time here. Yeah, do you want to
Drake
talk
had
about?
jump off.
Okay.
I'll be very brief and just let you know, and I'll follow up with some information when we send the minutes too. We have completed the required partner MOU updates, and we're awaiting 4 more signatures. And other than that, we'll be moving forward, and it would be in effect as of last Thursday, January 1 through June 30th of 27, with a revisit dependent upon the availability and are we ready to use the JobLink 2.0, which I keep calling it as a virtual co-location referral system. So but other than that, it's essentially the same MOU as the one that we just, that expired in June of last year. So we are out of compliance on that, and that will be something that we need to finish. The WIOA state plan modifications, we have drafted an executive summary based on our core partners' input and recommendations on what they want to do over the next 2 years. We are meeting later this week to go over that again. We need to have that when we're ready, which is hopefully in the next 2 weeks. We need to have that plan out for public comment for 30 days. And there's a potential that we will be asking the executive committee to come together for a very brief Teams meeting to take a look at where we're at and be able to vote on being able to allow to have the public comments. Just be aware of that. We're meeting next week with a handful of folks. Ruth is being one of them, and Kendall and myself, and Tiffany's on the phone, on the call, about the Workforce Pell implementation and all the guidance and everything that needs to happen on that by July 1. And this is what we're calling our internal kickoff meeting and assigning tasks, who's going to be responsible for what, and making sure that it gets completed in time, et cetera, et cetera. So that's Monday morning, next Monday, the 12th. And we are about to unveil the committees formations, subcommittee formations. So that'll also be happening in the next week. We have some legislative testimony later this week on the data trust report, just FYI. So we're working on that as well. And then we'll be reaching out to you all about the subcommittees, to you and the board. And if you're interested, we have picked dates for the full board meetings, or I can put them in the meeting, in the minutes and tell you the dates and times. I do not have locations yet. I have to do that next. I will ask one question of you all. In prior conversations, we had talked about doing it 9 to 11 in the mornings for the 2 shorter meetings and 9 to noon for the 2 longer meetings. And I believe several people suggested that maybe we should make it 9:30. I'm just throwing it out. Does anybody have any issues one way or the other? And obviously there'll be the virtual option as well in case your calendars can't let you get to Bennington County. But Jim Sullivan and I will be mad about that. Just joking. Anyway, but if that's the plan right now. And so we'll be following up with the dates and the times. And then we just have to nail down where we're going to be meeting, if you're going to be able to join us for in person. And I think that's it for now. Did I forget anything, colleagues at DOL? Kendall or Jay or anybody? Okay.
All right. Are there any other topics or anything that anyone wants to discuss today before we adjourn? All right. Great. Can we get a motion to adjourn then?
So moved.
Can I get a second, please?
Second.
Excellent. And so we will adjourn. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Stay warm.
Yeah, no kidding.